6:20, so we'll make a start. Welcome everyone to this meeting, February meeting of the Full-Time Council of Bingley. Welcome you all here, welcome members of the public. Thank you for turning up, thank you for showing an interest. I am only here for the first item on the agenda, after which I will be leaving. Before I go to that, I would just like to say a thank you to all my colleagues who have been so supportive and helpful and worked so hard during my term of office as chair and before that as councillor. It has been a privilege and an honour to serve the people of Bingley through the town council, and I'm very proud of the achievements that we've made particularly in the last few years. When I was elected in October 19, I don't think any of us could have anticipated the change in circumstances 6 months later. We've managed the pandemic, we've managed with remote meetings, we've managed with changes of staff, we've got the hub open, and we've carried on with all sorts of other projects, and I'm very proud that we were able to do so. On Sunday, the emergency support group was activated in anticipation of flooding, which fortunately, well, it did happen, but not to any residential properties and no loss of life or limb or anything else. And at that point, I'd like to say a really heartfelt thank you to John Good, who was out on Sunday in, I can't describe the weather, helping out people in Cottonley. And I'd like to pay special tribute to Councillor Good, who is always there when something practical needs to do. Thank you very much for that. So, we move on to the election of chair.
Chair, could I just, I suppose, offer my own thanks for what you've done for the council in the last 2 or 3 years as chair and before it. And I think you will be missed, and I think your dedication and commitment to the role and having to manage the council or oversee the council through some challenging times over the last couple of years, I think you should take some credit for that. So whatever individual policy differences some of us may have had, I think that, you know, I do appreciate the work you've done and the commitment, so I think you should give that.
Thank you everybody, thank you Jeff for those kind words. John?
Can I say something before we have the nominations, please? Because I think this is extremely relevant if we're going to have a new chairman. The letter that's come from Dan Brown, our auditor.
Point of order, Chair.
This is
relevant.
I think the thing is, John, that
It's not on the agenda, Chair.
Excuse me.
I'm incensed. I've got to say. I don't know what point of the meeting I can say something, but I just like what I was going to ask tonight when the chair had been elected was, can we all stop this? Really?
Right. I think that you have to take this up with the next chair. Okay. Ros?
I just wanted to second Jeff's vote of thanks. Thank you, a heartfelt thank you, Helen, for what you've done for Bingley in so many ways. And also, may we have a recorded vote?
Of course. So, we will move to the election of chair. May I have nominations, please? John?
I'd like to nominate Philippa Gibbon.
Okay, so nominated. May I have a seconder? Ross, seconded by Ross, thank you. Do I have any other nominations for chair? Lewis?
I've nominated Steve Williams.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Abdul. Okay. So we have 2 nominations there. The proposers and seconded are recorded, so we will take them in order that they were given. So the first one was for Philippa Gibbons to be elected as chair. Would you raise your hands, please, if you are in favour of that? Thank you. So that's Councillor Dawson, Beckwith, Gibbons, Owen and Wood. Thank you. And for Councillor Williams, could you raise your hands please? That's Councillor Malik, Kildare, Wingard, Heseltine, Trugle, Clough, Carney and Williams. Thereby duly elected Councillor Williams as Chair.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you. Paul?
Thank you, Helen.
Okay, well, please bear with me tonight. First I'm the chair of the big high chair, so we'll try and muddle through. Yes, Councillor Good, you will get a chance to talk about Diamond Brown's audit letter.
Steve, as part of that first item, do we need to elect a vice chair?
Vice Chair.
No,
Does it need to be on the agenda?
the next time, the next year, I think we're going to go, well, I don't know about him. Boss, do you know you've got more experience in chair? There's a vice chair vacancy now, but that's not on the agenda, so surely it goes on the next month's agenda, one a month, or we have an EGM.
I'm sorry, I can't recall whether we did it.
Hasn't happened before, I'm just wondering what you
It
knew.
has,
Ah.
but I can't recall whether we did it at the same meeting or whether it was a separate item. But it would be advisable for the council to have a vice chair.
Absolutely.
Put it on the next agenda then.
Well, unless anybody objects, could we just do it now? If we need a vice chair, then Councillor Dawson.
I don't have any problem with protocol, but it's a legal matter, I think,
Okay.
for the clerk.
I think we'll manage to do
I would imagine so. Okay, so chair's remarks then, 21, 22, 215. I've got 3 remarks because I rather suspected Helen was going to make remarks as the outgoing chair. So my first remark was thanks to Helen. So that's already been ably covered by Councillor Dawson and Councillor Winard. My second one was the flood, which had already been covered by Councillor Owen. So again, that's it. But the second one was obviously the audit letter from Diane Brown. I've got a statement to make on that, and I will take questions. So I'm going to read it fairly quickly because it doesn't need to take up all the time.
Excuse me, point of order, Chair. The Chair's remarks to make remarks, not to a question and answer session.
Okay. Well, thank you. So no questions. So my statement is that I cannot let the email from Diane Brown pass without comment. The email contained a number of significant errors and I would want to put the record straight. Diane Brown's audit report is on the agenda tonight and I thought it would be useful to speak with her about it prior to this meeting in terms of good governance. This call was on Friday afternoon. Helen had resigned the evening before, so I had a reasonable expectation at the time of chairing tonight's meeting when we discussed the report, either the pro tem or chair, so here we are. It took me less than 5 minutes to find her number on the internet. Diane says that her personal contact details are there for council use only, and I'm happy to speak to any councillor regarding her work. She actually said it 3 times in her email that she's happy to speak to councillors. So I see no problem with having a chat with our auditor. She actually reports to us, the council, not the clerk. Her report is about our consumption. She has said to me personally that she will welcome any call from any of us at any time. Indeed, Councillor Malik was going to ring her this afternoon. I don't know whether you did, Councillor Malik, but you had every intention of doing so.
Yes, I didn't get a chance to.
Okay. But she said that if you did call, then she'd be happy with it. So, the clerk's email of the 26th of January, which instructed Diane Brown to do some work, says, I sought advice from our internal auditor, Diane Brown, on how to present this budget information to residents as clearly as possible for transparency purposes. You will recall that we had an issue with the underspend and the wiring of money into another account. That was all we were asking Diane Brown to comment on. And yet we've received a report that goes well beyond this simple request. Diane and I spoke for 29 minutes on Friday, and Diane seemed content with the conversation we parted amicably. I was very professional throughout the call. Yes, I was challenging. Those of you who speak to me know I can be challenging, and I make no apology. But I wanted to know the background and some of the contents of the report and why there was specification drift. I did say that I thought the report was biased. I still think it's biased, and we're going to talk about that later. And we're going to talk about separate budgets. But I expressed concern to Diane that part of her report in that area would most likely contravene our equality policy and the Equality Act. So I asked her if she was knowledgeable about the Equality Act. Diane said she wasn't. So I explained that her proposal might be seen very negatively by the disabled community, in that a public authority must, in the exercise of its function, have due regard to the need to foster good relations between persons who share the relevant protected characteristic and persons who do not share it. She found linking of her recommendation on the public sector equality duty as a particularly challenging concept to graft, as she is a forensic auditor used by the YLCA to find fraudulent activity, not an auditor across the whole gamut of the Council's activity. She expressed the view that the Council does not have to comply with her suggestion. Furthermore, the report talks about the importance of having a business case and pulling the plug on it if necessary. I told Diane that we do have a case for the change in places, and we approved it on December the 7th, but here was the subject in the audit report. I asked her why this was so. She explained that many councils are running up debts that they cannot afford, and now don't have adequate business cases in place, and that is primarily the reason she is retiring this year, as she doesn't want to be tarnished with the brush of a failed council. She accepted this was not the case with Bingley, and she said she's including that phrase in every audit report she now makes. And that seemed to me to be lacking objectivity and could give our readers the impression that Bingley lacked adequate controls, which is simply not the case. Diane said the same about her phrase, all councils should aim to give excellent value for money to ensure monies raised and spent benefit the local community. This sentence too could give readers the impression that Bingley Council did not do this, and again this is simply not the case. Another area of concern for me was a sentence that reads, another area of concern is that the set-up costs for this project have been higher than first thought, and this may have a knock-on effect on the day-to-day operational costs. This is incorrect and doesn't fall within the requested advice. So I asked Diane who she had talked to. Her reply was that she had only talked to Eve and Ruth Batterley. I queried about the timing of the conversation with Ruth, and she confirmed it was recent. Quite why our auditor feels it okay to talk to someone outside of the council for the majority of the secret project and the whole of this budget year is in itself questionable.
Did you speak to us, Steve?
That's what she told me on Friday. Now, you know, we can split hairs about that, but I didn't record the conversation, but that's exactly, because I challenged her on it. I said, why have you spoken to me? Oh, I'm working for her, and I know her, she's a friend. We had the conversation. Right? Neither of us record, but, you know, there's integrity going on here. So I do find the report of little value, and if someone expresses an opinion, I feel that we should be free to question it, all of us. We could have asked her to come over and sit before us so we could talk to her about it, but we'd have had to pay her expenses to do that, and I covered it with a simple phone call. I knew nothing of any other call to Diane. I made some inquiries yesterday after I saw the email, and have located the reason for the call. The recording of the latest meeting of the Change in Places working group on YouTube was published by the council on Friday morning. In this recording, Diane Brown is mentioned by the clerk in relation to the splitting of budgets and monitoring usage of the disabled toilets. I had outlined my dislike to her regarding this recommendation in our phone call, so it's no wonder someone with a closer relationship to disability would feel more aggrieved than I did. That member of the public found her number in the same way as I did on Saturday morning, after phoning Eve and her ward councillor on Friday afternoon with no response to ask who they were, who Diane Brown was, and why she was recommending this. And quite why Diane Brown believes her phone number isn't easy to locate is beyond me. I think Abdul, you might have some, well, you can't answer, but Abdul found 10 different instances of her phone number on the interweb. But the biggest truth in her email is the allegation that I had given her number out. And she states this without a single shred of evidence. there's a whole paragraph dedicated to a conversation between a member of public and her, which has got nothing to do with this council, nothing at all, absolutely nothing at all, which I did find troubling given her role as a forensic auditor. The allegation is harmful to me personally, and as she shared it with the whole council, it has caused reputational injury to me. I sought a retraction today, an apology in vain. She now denies saying it, but it is there in the email for all of you to read, and you can make your own judgments. So that's my statement on Diane Brown. Right. It's now on YouTube, and we can move on. So 2122-216, apologies for absence. The book has gone round to there, and there are 2 apologies for that.
Those,
We've got to do them individually, John. So
yeah, proposed Ashraf.
Seconded Ashraf. All in favour of Ashraf? That's all in favour.
Proposed Owen.
Proposed Dave Barton. Seconded Lewis Gerdau. All in favour? Okay, thank you very much. And 2122-217, disclosure of interest. To receive declarations of interest from councillors on the items on the agenda. Are there any from around the room? Yes. Okay. Have you received any written requests for dispensation?
Not received, no.
Thank you, Mark. So we're not going to grant any requests for dispensation as opposed to it. And we move on to the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 18th of January, which were attached in the agenda pack. So, any questions on the agenda of the 18th of January, please? No? Does anyone want to propose them as being a true and accurate record, please? Proposed by Mo Carney, seconded by Abdul Malik. All those in favour? That's all hands went up there, thank you. 2122-219, confidential item to be discussed in confidence after item 241. To consider if any further items on the agenda need to be discussed in confidence after item 241, following exclusion of the press and public due to their sensitive nature. Has anyone thought that there was something on the agenda that we should move? There are a couple of sensitive items on the agenda. I wonder whether anyone had anything else. No, we all content? Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to public participation. Item 21, 22, 220. Members of the public are reminded that this is their opportunity to speak to the meeting on any topic relevant to the work of the council. However, they may not speak during the rest of the meeting unless specifically invited to do so by the chair. So, welcome guests, welcome Donald. I'm thinking your hand's just about to go up, so Donald would like to say. I'd like to see if anyone else wants to say anything, Donald, so we can split the 20 minutes. Anyone else want to say anything? No? Okay, Donald, you have 20 minutes.
As the chairman, take much less than that. As this is a meeting in public.
Donald, can I just ask you to move to this other chair so that...
This one?
Yeah, so that A, we can hear you better, and B,
How long have you got?
sorry. Take your time. I just think it might... It's like the mastermind chair. Sorry?
Good evening. Good evening.
Sorry, Donald, for the inconvenience there, but the microphone won't get you at the back.
As this is a meeting in public, may I please implore members of council to allow us to hear what you're actually saying. I'm only sitting there, my hearing is pretty good for a 90-odd-year-old, but I just cannot hear everything that is being said. Yesterday I tuned into this to try to catch up on what had been happening last month, and I could hardly hear a word. Now, as these meetings, I don't know what legalities attached to these meetings, but I do think that at least we should be privileged to hear what is actually being said on our behalf.
Okay, I think we'll take that on board,
Please.
Donald,
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I know it's
Was that it? I'm sorry I dragged
Yes,
you
that's
there.
all right.
For that.
For the moment.
Apologies. Take your time, Donald, please. And I guess my response to that is some of the venues are echoing and this one is particularly cold. You know, some of the others are echoey and don't record very well. But I'm hoping we've all heard your request for us to speak up. Okay, thank you. So moving on to 21-22/221 SIL funding application. To consider the SIL application received from Crossflats Cricket Club, including to receive representation from them, further information attached. Well, I'm delighted to welcome the two guys from Crossflats Cricket Club. And again, if you're going to say anything, could I ask you to bring a chair up and just address the whole council from a little bit nearer? I guess it's your opportunity to make representations. We've all got the papers, and we've all seen what you want. If you want to come and talk to us, that would be great. Yes, John.
Would it be appropriate for me to propose this, because we've had more information about this than any other application for a grant.
You can propose it. I have no issue with you proposing it as chair. But we want to ensure that if anyone wants to say anything, there is adequate debate. So yes, you can propose it, no problem. Anytime you like.
Because it not only covers a vast amount of people, it's local. Cricket in general is, I'd say, was in decline, where they've got a fantastic amount of
They're making their presentation.
They've got a fantastic.
They need to speak now, John. You've done it. So John Good, Councillor Good is proposing.
Nobody wants to sell the tuppence in our sector.
Councillor
Can
Carney
I
got in
ask
first.
a question?
Yes, that's what I was saying. I'm rather suspecting.
I know you know what my question is anyway. Just from your application, you're saying the whole project is £47,000 a bit, and you've given us some quotes that come out around £36,000. So if what you've given us quotes for is covered by the money from yourselves and Sport England, what will our money go towards? Because still money can only go to certain things. We need to be clear that
I think the question is it can't be used to top up, it'll be spent on something.
it's got to be spent on something, and we need to know what it's going to be spent on, and we need to prove to us what we've spent it on. So out of that 47,000, where do you see our money going?
It will be the whole practice facility, the netting, there's the structures to build it, there's the groundworks, there's the actual surface that goes down, there's the protective fencing round to stop vandalism. I suppose it would be going just towards the surface actually itself that there would be training on.
There's plenty to, sorry, can I just say, there's plenty to spend it on, isn't there, because you've got all these plans in place.
Yeah, it's getting.
And I know what Philip was saying, that we have to have a bill at the end of the day and say, yeah, it went on that. But I think we've got particular items and projects, haven't we, where that will go to.
Yeah, it's basically one big construction project. There's two. It's a two-lane facility, so with the netting round. So you can't really do one without the other. If you wouldn't put the nets up just over the ground. It needs the actual surface in the groundworks, the aggregate.
But for me, that seems to be what the quotes have covered.
Yeah.
If you're just saying our money's going against that quote,
When you say quotes, Councillor, do you mean contributions?
No, I mean the quotes that are in the pack cover all the aspects that they've just spoken about, and it comes about £36,000.
This seems absolutely fundamental. All we need to do is pick an element.
Pick an element
out of that, whether it be groundworks, that's equivalent to £7,000. Send us a bill, job done.
I think that's probably sound.
Yeah.
Can you guys do that?
Yeah, that'd be no problem.
Okay. Councillor Dawson.
So I just wanted to say, through the chair, thank you very much for such a very good information. Is £7,000 enough as a contribution, first of all?
It's enough to get the project going, yeah, because I think we've got the ECB grant that's coming in, and then we've raised some funds ourselves, which are going there. I mean, obviously, if there were more money, that'd allow us to spend more money on the juniors and get more facilities for them. But the main thing for us is that our ground's absolutely at capacity now with that many people. We're just overwhelmed on a Friday with the amount of children training and things, so the whole thing is just to get that build going, and we can kind of look to build again, but that's
Part of one of the reasons why we're sort of trying to push it through as soon as we can. Obviously, summer's approaching, and we're anticipating up to sort of 250 players, be that senior players, junior members, female players as well. And if we don't get it booked in by a certain time, we're going to, by the time it's done, it'll be the end of summer. So we'll miss that opportunity as well. So sorry, yeah, so.
Well, actually, that makes sense. I was just going to say that the SIL money is one part of funding, but there is also a grants part as well. So you could, so applying for the SIL doesn't preclude them from also applying for grants funding, is it, from other projects as well, which you could also do. And
Sorry to interrupt. I am informed Lee of that also, Lee Bailey, who's part of the team. But you're right, Ross was able to straightforward, so you can still apply.
So is that the 2,000?
Our funding is 2,000.
Right.
well, the maximum grant is 2,000. If you wanted more than that, then there is
It covers the full
contingency
council.
to make grant funding above that, but that's generally what the large grant funding is
Right.
for. And as you just noted about women and girls playing, I noticed about 20-25% of your players are female, aren't they?
Yeah,
And so presumably there's more efforts underway to encourage that proportion to increase, not to go down. I would expect.
Yeah, we've just got a women's hardball team actually signed up into a league that's going to be starting this year as well as a softball, so it is quite, the women's and girls side really ticking off.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, good luck to you. I think it's a fantastic project.
I was particularly pleased to see the descriptions of the membership. I also searched your paperwork for the equality duty and the disability duty of equal the coverage of Bingley Parish. I mean, to me, you ticked every box that was going. I couldn't fault it. I was aware of the question from Councillor Gibbons there, but yeah, I thought it was an admirable presentation. A good gift to make. Councillor Kerr.
It's not really a question, more of a comment. I don't like it. But if there was a facility like this down the road for me when I was young, I probably would. That sounds like a fantastic thing. So great. There's a rugby pitch next door as well.
It's been proposed by Councillor Good and Councillor Kerr seconded it. So all in favour of granting the SIL? That's in the back then, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Good luck. Good to see you.
Yes, thank you.
Right, Chair, I shall be going now.
Thank you very much, Harold. Yeah. Good to see you. So, 21-22-222 ongoing items. So, to receive information updates on the following ongoing issues and agree further actions where necessary. Bingley Court. All I can say about that is I'm attending a meeting on Thursday night. Well, it is still going on. I understand Councillor Good and Councillor Heselton can't go.
I actually attended a meeting yesterday with the Friends of Bingley who I went to, and the Jason Longhurst call.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, the upshot is that basically the Bingley is not going to be open.
No.
As is. I don't know if you know more on this one.
I wonder whether Councillor Carney wants to step in and make that.
To be honest, I didn't.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't make the meeting yesterday. I was there in the Wednesday last night's meeting. So I don't know the details of it, but it should come down to Thursday meeting where there are going to be obviously town council invited, and it's basically where we're going to discuss next steps. So I think after Thursday, at the next full council meeting, we should have a lot more we can pass over.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I just...
Yes, Councillor.
I don't want to dwell on this, but there seems to be some mix-up over something that was written in the newsletter about a working group on Bingley Pool. And as far as I'm aware, the town council hasn't set up a working group. But the working group was this one that was being referred to.
I can explain that.
Of this, and there was misinformation, I think, on the Friends of Bingley Pool Facebook page about this, and it's so we haven't set up a working group, have we?
I can talk to it because I do know where the confusion emanated from. Is we were aware that they had Friends of Bingley Pool had a working group. We appointed Councillor Good and Councillor Heseltine to that group and put it in the newsletter. What we didn't do was tell Friends of Bingley Pool that we'd done that. But it was the first thing they saw of it, as I understand it, was in our newsletter. So they said, oh, Bingley Town Council set up, we were actually joining their working group.
It was just a misunderstanding because in the draft, the names of the councillors weren't there. So when the actual one went through the letterboxes, the Friends of Bingley Pool looked at and contacted me and said, hang on a minute, where did these 3 councillors come from? And it was because it said a working group was formed, it looked like it was being formed by the town council. Anyway, it's all been straightened out.
I think we can confirm in public debate that the Bingley Town Council does not have a working group for Bingley Pool because it hasn't got a properly formed terms of reference for any working group. We haven't voted on any working group. We simply appointed 3 councillors. In fact, it was Councillor Owen, wasn't it? And Heseltine and Good.
Which is absolutely fine with that, Friends of Bingley Pool, that's why I didn't like to meet.
Because the Friends of Bingley Pool has always taken the lead on this issue.
And they still are.
And taken responsibility with the cat.
Yeah.
And, and that has been the position, and have required and asked for support from Bingley Town Council and been given it as and when needed.
Yeah, you won't know, but before your re-election, the F&GP looked at a set of flowcharts that I made with, if we were to step in as Bingley Town Council, these are the steps we need to take. And they talked about public consultation, they talked about staffing levels, it talked about talking to schools. It was like, the number of steps was vast, and it was a couple of years project. So the F&GP looked at it and said, right, okay, that's noted. It's just noted of a project plan that had no dates on it. It's a flowchart, basically. So it didn't go anywhere, but it's there in the background on a minute somewhere in the F&GP. But there is no working group in Bingley Town Council. Okay. Can we move on to... Councillor Heseltine, you've been waiting.
I had a meeting with Jason Longhurst start of the week, confirmed that Bingley Pool, other Bradford Metro, isn't going to open. We had concerns about the building, the gym and the youth cafe. Current thinking is that those 2 elements will remain because recreation will leave, the building is more secure with tenants in it rather than just being tinned up and waiting disposal. So that's why we had. He also confirmed that water space within Bingley is being looked at as part of the level of.
Yes, good.
Yes, Councillor. What's the actual position? Because while we were in the hub, our hub one day, a member of the public came and then said the doors were locked, he wanted to go to the gym. Is it closed or is it open?
It's either 3 or 4 days a week, specific times.
I see, okay. Thank you.
And presumably those times are written on the door or on a website somewhere.
Who would have thought?
I think you might have seen the light inside them, that's why I thought it was
At the end of the tunnel, perhaps. Yes, Councillor.
So can I ask, what's meant by water space?
Available swimming space to
It's swimming space we're talking
Yeah.
about. Right,
That's
so
what we call it, water space.
Yeah. Okay, so can we move on to the hub building, please? So I guess I'm going to look at the clerk and the deputy clerk for an update on the hub building. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Where we're at with the building is, I'm just waiting for the construction company, CNG, to get back to me with a date fixed.
Did you hear that, Donald?
Sorry, I'm just waiting for the construction company to get back to me with a date to fix the building.
The insurance company have accepted the quotes. They have 2 quotes. They've accepted the lower of the 2 quotes and have appointed and basically will watch this space for the woodwork on the side to be repaired. Okay, that I guess was the update on the hub. There's nothing else to go with that. So moving on then to 21-22-233 finance, schedule of payments and bank reconciliation. That was one of the supporting documents out there. And schedule of payments is there. Bank reconciliation. Okay, I can't find my bank reconciliation. The schedule of payments. Any questions from councillors on the schedule of payments? No? So we're just receiving those. So duly received? Yes? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Bank reconciliations. Have they come out? Have I been delinquent in not having them turn in? They have come out. Okay. Well, I'm skating on ice at the moment. So does any other councillor want to make any thoughts on the bank reconciliation?
They look fine to me.
That's good enough for me, Councillor Gibbons. So, any other comments? No, we're duly received, thank you very much. B then, budget 1. To consider including separate cost centres in the budget for the running costs of the hub office, hub toilets and changing basis toilets, as advised by the internal auditor report attached. I have issues with this, as you're probably aware, but I'm willing to let other councillors, well, absolutely willing to let other councillors speak before I say what I have an issue with. So anyone got any thoughts on that?
Chair, I would just like to say that I think it's logical to have cost centres for each element that you're working on.
Sorry, Mark, Councillor Joe, I can't hear you.
What you're after, so what we've got here, you do need to have separate cost centres for various elements of running your operation.
That's true, we've probably got 100 cost centres.
Well, it doesn't matter, I think we should actually have them shown down there for what it's costing to run it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I've thought.
Yes, Councillor.
The problem seems to be that by doing that, it's thought by groups that it's discriminatory, not in any way, shape or form.
Actually, that is not the case, Councillor.
It's the way, can I finish?
You can.
This is the way I see it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that there's nothing wrong. I agree with Mark on that. The thing is that to me, it's irrelevant whether there's one person who uses the changing faces toilet or 1,000. The point is that we've agreed to do it, it's going to get done, it's going to cost a figure. That figure is irrelevant as regards the public. So I would support having it in 3, but I'm not concerned about
anyone else?
the opinion that people have, because everybody has opinions.
I get that, and opinions are good to share. Councillor Heselton.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that if we do break it down too far, you are actually aiming detractors, protected community. It's a toilet. To me.
It's an office as well, Councillor Heselton.
It should be one budget.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Gibbons.
I think we probably need a hybrid, sorry.
Right, okay.
Because if we have one contract for cleaning the toilets, we're going to get one invoice for cleaning the toilets. And although if we do get things like freedom of information requests in, we should be able to split that out into the elements. We don't want the cleaning contractor to have to do it every month. We don't want the clerks to have to split it out and assign it to different lines. So where there's one contract delivering multiple things, I think that should just stay together. Where we have separate contracts that deliver something, whether it be the maintenance of the hoist,
Such the
then
hoist,
I think that can
the
come
health
out and be,
management
and be a separate line. I don't see any problem with
No.
that, and it gives us some granularity and some sense, I think.
There was another hand up down the end there, was that? Yes, Councillor Wilson.
I absolutely agree with Councillor Tulin on this. I mean, this year the projected spend for the running costs on toilets is £15,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the 22-23 budget is £24,000.
Yeah.
So is that the running costs of the toilets as they are, or is that the running costs of the toilets with the new facility as well?
With the new facility, yeah.
So the new facilities added effectively £9,000 to the budget.
You can
So
see
it's-
that
so it's
later in the
possible-
agenda.
But it wasn't clear because I just had to ask that question to clarify it. So I think it's really important that we are as transparent as possible. If it's necessary to have a hybrid with some of the contracts, as Philip has said, then make it clear that there are some costs which are covered by separate contracts. But otherwise, it's really important to know what residents' money is being spent on.
Thank you. Councillor Kerber.
I've got sympathy with the arguments being made. However, I think that the group with a protected characteristic here don't necessarily fully believe in how this council has always functioned with regard to the Changing Places facility. I'm not here to make arguments about whether that's right or wrong. However, I think that we have an obligation to have a sympathetic ear to them and to understand what their arguments are and to be very, very sensitive to not in any way threaten to weaponise this information against the project, which would therefore be against a minority protected characteristic group in Bingley. Given there's been sort of efforts at unpicking the ball of twine in previous meetings, I feel, I'm a little bit uneasy with splitting it out. With that being said, I think Councillor Gibbons' suggestion of splitting it out but only to a sensible degree makes sense. Personally, I would just have the toilets under one heading. I can't understand the need for it to be split out further than that.
My thoughts on this were, this was one of the topics I picked up with Diane Brown, the auditor. Her reaction was, it's something new and therefore you should measure it properly. My answer to that was, it's just a toilet. We've got a quote from a cleaner to clean the toilet, which was £8,000, and it wasn't a complicated budget to manage. She then talked about multiple things within the budget code, and I pointed her towards the regeneration and tourism budget, which has about 5 things in it, and we managed that £20,000 quite adequately without splitting out Christmas market, Christmas trees, railings, and all the other things which are in that budget. And indeed, many of us have said at budget time, what exactly is in the regen and tourism budget? We don't really know. So I thought it was making mountains out of molehills for a recommendation, and it also was outside the brief that we actually asked her to do, so that was a major issue to me. But thirdly, Councillor Gibbons has nailed it, if the cleaning contract comes in, are we going to ask YEB for separate power feeds into the separate facilities? So we actually have 3 meter readings to read. How do we split out the electricity? And bearing in mind, the office hub is going to be the major user. That's going to be the bigger budget out of these 3 things. So it actually is kind of, be careful what you wish for, because it's going to highlight the cost of the offices. I don't have an issue with that. That's what it's simply going to do. We've also got the auto fire protection. We've got fire protection across the whole hub. There are various things. We've got a roof over the whole hub. So there are various things which are holistic, and they should remain holistic. But I get the sense that if it went to a vote tonight, there would be more councillors minded to do it than not. So I have an issue with that in as much as it's a proposal to do a fairly fundamental thing with a risk of offending a community associated with it, and there should perhaps be a longer discussion of that. So my suggestion was, can we flip it to the F&GP to get a more focus on it, with a recommendation to come back to the council as we do that. I think Councillor Carney had a hand up first.
I think before we discuss it, me personally, I need to know more about it. What is this information being used for, etc.?
Yeah.
It's more about the wider issues. I think as much as we
Which is on the R&R's a risk.
Yeah, we covered those bits and pieces. It's about what's that information for? Why are we splitting it or not splitting it? And like I say, what are the implications? Are we then opening ourselves up to ask questions about how much the toilets are costing, how much the costs?
Yeah.
People then going to put in freedom of information because they don't want to know how many people use the toilets every day.
Well, that's coming up later.
And I think, considering everything that's gone on, we need to start building bridges with this group.
And of course, the other thing
As we have finally decided it's going to happen, and what's going on, we need to start building bridges with this group and building some trust back. And I'm not saying that they're not faultless, or that they're not blameless. It's a very important subject, and I just think we need more time before we come back to this.
I think I'm going to throw it over to Councillor Dawson, but I would say, in doing so, that Diane Brown has said this is only a suggestion, a recommendation. We don't have to accept it. It may well come up in the future once you audit again, but it's not a hard and fast we have to do it. So, yes, Councillor Dawson.
So first of all, an internal auditor's advice, a local government internal auditor's advice, is really more than advice. It is a direction that should be acted on. That underscores what we're doing. Secondly, I think the conflation of hidden agendas and the rest of it is really wrong and misleading. This is about a project and a new project. Whatever it's for, people need to know how the money is being spent. I think Philippa's point is well made, and I would like to propose that we consider including separate costs in the budget for the running costs of each of these, wherever possible, unless a hybrid is more appropriate. And I think I'm going to propose that now, as it's on the agenda, and I would ask for somebody to second it.
Can I make a point of order from the chair? Because I've actually proposed that we throw it to the F&GP for wider consideration.
So you get a seconder for that then?
Well, I haven't. That's what I'm asking. Is there a seconder to put it to the F&GP? Yes. So, have you got a seconder? I have simply no wish to do it tonight.
No, we vote on your motion, Steve. You've got a contrary motion. We vote on whether
Thank
yours
you for that
carries.
clarification. So, all in favour of passing it to the F&GP? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we part.
No, Robert, vote.
Oh, you voted motion. So which one would you like to vote for, Councillor Beckwith? The first F&GP? Yeah, okay, thank you. I would also add that in the recommendations from Diane Brown, there's the business case. It's been lost from the recommendation, so why are we cherry picking from Diane Brown's audit report? Because number 4 on the list was business cases. So I would propose to add the conversation about business cases to the F&GP feedback, if that's okay with the council. So in other words, let's pick up all recommendations and not just cherry pick.
Can I make a suggestion on that and make a point of order? I think you miscounted. I think it was 5 in favour of the motion, not 6.
Okay.
Not 6, it can't be 6.
No. But also, in regard to the business case documentation, I'm not on F&GP. However, as a suggestion from the project manager, it might be an idea to just look at the overall project documentation, not just business cases, but other stuff as well, just so that way we are enacting good governance and making sure.
I was picking up Councillor Dawson's view that an audit report from an auditor should be taken seriously, and yet there we were ignoring a recommendation. And I didn't quite know why. So I thought I'd throw it in
You
there.
didn't ignore that. Sorry, I'm sorry, Chair. How do you mean ignoring a recommendation?
No, the business case, if you read Diane Brown's audit report, she makes more than this recommendation.
Yeah.
So she makes a recommendation that we should review business case processes and strengthen our business case processes. So I'm saying it's not on the agenda.
Right.
So I'm querying why that is. So I would like to throw that down to the FGP as well. Okay.
So what are we doing on this first item?
Sorry, I'm just a bit confused, Chair. What are we voting on?
We had voted to
You can't
pass.
Chair, could we have a recount because there seems to be some confusion?
on the numbers.
We're voting to pass Diane Brown's recommendation to include separate cost centres in the budget and
No, we weren't doing that.
We weren't doing that. That was what Ross proposed.
I proposed that we were voting to put some discussion about this to the F&G.
Yes, that's what I'm
We
saying.
were voting on whether your motion was going to be
I have to finish the
accepted or not.
sentence, Councillor Dawson.
Well, I'm
Yes,
sure
to
you're
throw-
confusing us,
to
Chair.
throw that to the F&GP. So the proposal is, which was seconded.
But then you said we have got
by
to
one.
discuss the business case as well.
Because it's in the recommendations.
So what are we sending to the F&GP, Chair?
Diane Brown's recommendation.
All of them, all
Yes.
the 4 bullet
Because
points.
you just said, you just pointed out that we shouldn't ignore them.
I didn't point that out.
Okay.
I didn't say
You
that.
said that, not me.
You said that, and you just pointed out one of the recommendations, the next one should go for the, so are you saying that your recommendation is not that we vote on B1, but that instead you have a separate motion, which is that all these recommendations about more detail, a separate cost centre, further detail, the calculation of reserves and improved business case process, that all those recommendations should be sent to the F&GP? Is that what you're proposing?
That's what I'm proposing.
That in the agenda.
Exactly.
That in the agenda item though, isn't it?
We're talking about, listen, in order to make it simple, let's pass this to the F&GP, and on the F&GP...
No.
Let's vote on passing this item
No.
to the F&GP.
Why?
No. They'll need to vote on, so she'll vote on it.
Yeah, that's the point, and there's nothing mentioned in this agenda about reviewing the whole policy.
Okay.
Well, the budget's been set.
No, but Steve's put forward a motion.
Yes, I
seconded
agree,
by
I agree,
Corey,
I
that
agree.
That,
Yes.
plus the business case, it added on afterwards, people
I'm
voted.
ceding, with Councillor Dawson, I'm ceding away on the business case because I can add it to the F&GP agenda and we can discuss it, but it's not on this agenda, you're quite right. So we can pick that up. I just didn't want to miss it because, as you said, good governance requires us to look at the audit report.
Do we need, given that confusion, given there was a miscount potentially, should we vote on that motion again with great clarity?
I think we should. So the motion as proposed by me is that B1 to consider does not have a risk and resource document associated with it. It doesn't have a councillor proposing it. It's an audit report and it should be considered in greater depth. Certainly Councillor Carney doesn't really understand it. Councillor Gibbons is saying there ought to be a hybrid, so there's enough conversation going on to facilitate an F&GP review of that particular item, which was seconded by Councillor Carney as being a reasonable thing to do. All in favour of that particular motion? So that is 1, 2, 3, 4. Councillor Beckwith, you've changed your mind again, so...
Don't pick on people, please. You take the vote straight, please, Chair.
Okay.
All those against?
All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we split the budgets.
No, we haven't voted on that. We voted on your amended motion. We haven't voted on this.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for your guidance, Councillor
And
Dawson.
my motion was to consider including a separate cost centre in the budget for the running costs of its hub office, hub toilets and challenging placing facility wherever practical, including hybrid if necessary, which was still a
Yes,
proposal,
yeah.
as advised by the internal auditor report
Point
attached.
of order, Councillor Dawson. You just amended this motion, which isn't on the agenda, but Councillor Good said I couldn't do that. So,
Can I just
you can
intervene?
only vote what's on the agenda, I was told just now.
So to what Councillor Dawson's just raised, you, towards the end of the motion, said if appropriate or words to that effect. Can you define what that would mean? Because what I'm trying to establish is Are the toilets being treated as one, or are they being split out because that would materially impact my vote?
Well, through the chair, as I understood it, the point that the Councillor Gibbons was making, that there were some costs which straddle the toilets, the changing places toilets and the hub office. And to try and split them would be almost impossible. But there are some costs where it is possible to separate them out. And there are some costs which are unique to each of those facilities. And so wherever it's practicable to separate out the costs because they were unique to those facilities or they can be counted and attributed to those facilities, then they should be. That should happen. And where it isn't, then a hybrid has to be used. That was what I understood through the chair, Councillor Gibbons, you were proposing. Is that right?
I agree with what you're saying, but my concern is who makes that judgment. And my theory was the F&GP should consider it and go through those numbers, go through every budget, every line item that's coming into the services.
But we've already voted on a motion, and it's
I
been
get that.
defeated.
I get that, but I'm just explaining why.
That was my
question. You've had your opportunity to explain the motion.
Do we need to have it quite so aggressive, please? Can we just calm down, because this is needless? I was asking a very similar question to what you articulated then, Steve, so Chair. And what I'm trying to ascertain is what are the criteria for splitting these out? What is a hybrid and what isn't a hybrid? What is appropriate, what isn't appropriate? That's all I'm trying to...
Who makes that judgment?
That's the question that I'm asking. And as I understand it, I thought Councillor Dawson was the proposer rather than Councillor Gibbons, but I'm happy to direct that question to whoever's proposing it. I just want the answer.
Yeah. Councillor Dawson.
Which I have just given.
I'm afraid it wasn't particularly clear to me, so it wasn't all that helpful.
Okay. So are we leaving it to the clerk to decide how to split the budget?
Yeah, I mean, there are items that come in, it's not an issue, surely. It can be something that, if it's a hoist in the changing places, well, we know where it allocates to. We should have thought of easy not to describe it.
Where can you put the electricity budget?
The electricity budget, you can split that up anyway, you can get a calculation of what it works out. I don't think you're getting too pedantic and too deep into it. Let's just look at the high level of what it's costing. We need to know what the hub's going to cost, what the changing place is going to cost us, because there obviously will be a cost there. And we don't really know what that is, because we're a bit stargazing, to be honest. We don't know what the true cost will be. But there'll obviously be some running costs there, which we need to eke out and see what it's going to cost us. And those will come up at a high level. You don't need to do it in finite detail.
Okay. So it would seem to be the clerk making the choices on where they go.
Well, we need to vote on this first. I'll second Councillor Dawson's
I think it's been seconded by Councillor Gibbons.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so good. So, all in favour of that? 3, 4, 5. All those against? 4. Okay.
Just join stuff on.
Yeah.
So, moving on then. 2 on your agenda, II, has been deleted by the clerk and an email was sent out on that regard. So we move on to 3. To agree to via 2,200 receiving donations this fiscal year to Cost Centre 4525, Changing Places facility. These are the donations received from our kind sponsors or donators, which we need to recognise and we need to spend them specifically on the Changing Places. And we have agreed to recognise their donations in some form of small label, plaque, marketing or whatever. Seconded by Councillor Starmer, in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Internal controls, to receive a verbal report on the Q3 internal controls procedure, further information attached. So, who is going to make that verbal report, please?
Yeah, you go ahead.
So Ros and I met and went through the internal controls with the staff. There is a document that was the actions that we agreed that we've got in front of you. It was just the things that we were clear on, or that as we discussed, we thought we would improve, but basically the controls were all signed off with the actions that are on the top of it. Have you got it, Steve? You want me to say what they are?
Yeah, actually right in front of me. Yeah, so there's a bunch of actions agreed there.
But we'll just, will improve our internal control procedures. Jeez.
So was any exceptions that you found, that any concerns, or was it all?
Well, these were the areas of concern, really.
Right.
So areas needed improvement. Just where we asked questions and we couldn't necessarily get a full audit roll back to
So what are the actions on
these things.
yeah, no, who's doing it, when's it happening, you know, is there a report back, is it in the clerk's report next month, you know, what's the background to the action?
Should be done before the end of the
So
I mean, we would expect when we, as an independent controls group, when we do quarter four, we would expect.
we would yes, okay, yeah. Any questions on the internal reports meeting, controls meeting? Okay, thank you. Moving on then. 21-22-224, changing places working group, feedback by me. This is actually really the clerk's report, because in December the 7th we agreed that the clerk was doing the detail of all this, supported by the CPWG. So I can certainly talk to it. Bullet point 1, access arrangements, radar key, keypad.
Can you increase the volume just?
Yeah, sorry. Are you struggling, Donald? So,
Chair, may I ask, where's the recent draft minutes circulated?
No, there were a couple of minutes that were for the CPWG. Also, the emergency support and the facilities were just at that time, so there will be.
I said it there.
We can't hear you, so unless you speak up, because the fan blowing in the background.
yeah, on the agenda pack was the minutes of the Monday. No, that's actually wrong. That's a supporting document I brought. So I guess I'll respond that it's on YouTube, Councillor Dawson, but I appreciate that's not a requirement. I haven't got the latest
No,
minutes.
the CPWG, the emergency
Have
support
not been done.
and the facilities management have not been circulated.
Oh, okay, that's what I can't find. So the answer is no, So I can give you a verbal update. We have agreed, the clerk has agreed, as I said, been a little bit pedantic, that with the contractor, that a keypad will be added to the door. So basically, when we had the tender, the radar key was a physical key in the lock on the door as a traditional lock. They have now amended their specification and gone to Healthmatic, who is the supplier of our existing doors, to add the functionality of strike locks and keypads. So that has been agreed by the clerk and included in their specification. So that's what it effectively does is future-proofs the door for later use if we decide to extend the hours. So no decision has been made on that, but we have a radar key and a keypad.
Sorry, so what does the keypad do? What's its function?
The keypad, if you recall the timer programmer in the large store, all the small rooms to the right as you go into a hub. So it's got a program on there which sets the time for the two toilets, the opening, from 9 o'clock till 6 o'clock. There's going to be a second one next to that which controls the out of hours opening of the hub. Sorry, of the single toilet. So if in normal hours it will be radar key 9 till 6. but should you want to open it till maybe 8 o'clock by special arrangement with the Bingley Arts Centre or a special function or market stall or whatever the reason is for future use, you would therefore program the keypad and the time lock to extend the hours, if that makes sense. Yeah. So we've basically future-proofed the facility for opening after hours in the future, because the CP toilet is not replicated in Bingley, whereas disabled toilets and ordinary toilets are replicated in the pubs and clubs of the other facilities in Bingley. Okay. The layout of the cleaning stores, if I can move on, that's been agreed. Councillors Good and True Love were involved in that conversation, and that detail has been provided to the contractor. CCTV, they've agreed to put in Cat6 cable, Ethernet cables in the infrastructure of the hub, leaving tails out on the wall so that we can get our Yorkshire security services to put 2 additional cameras on there and plug them into our existing CCTV. So the CCTV coverage of the hub will then cover the boundaries of the CP toilet. Fire alarm sounders likewise, but they have agreed to extend the fire alarm sounders into the CP toilet, because you can't have someone in the CP toilet with a fire alarm building next door. So that's sort of no-brainer. Recording user usage, that has caused a huge degree of controversy because it literally is not subject to recommendation by the Change in Places Working Group, has never been on the Change in Places Working Group agenda, didn't feature in the business case, and was only mentioned by the clerk to the contractor as any other business. So, as chair of the working group, I had an issue with that, and to try and help councillors understand the issue, I sent round late this afternoon, and apologies for doing it, but it's all in the order boxes, a partial transcript of the CPWG held on the 20th of the 12th. Now I have the minutes of that, that was the one I did put with me today. And
it's not the minutes though, is it? It's the transcript.
No, the minutes, I have the minutes of the 20th of the 12th.
Of the actual, yes.
I have the actual minutes. So the minutes read, discussion took place regarding the potential monitoring of the use of the change in place of toilet, similar to the recording of the footfall of the other hub toilets. However, it was agreed that this is not necessary, not possible with the use of radar key access. So that was the agreed minute from the meeting. The transcript I've sent round, if you watch the YouTube, it's there on public display on our YouTube account. It's fair to say it was a robust discussion. It starts off with Councillor Owen.
Excuse me, point of order, Chair. I think it's really inappropriate to send out documents late on the afternoon of the meeting that councillors haven't had a chance to read properly, that haven't been provided as part of an agenda. It's wrong to start taking transcripts from YouTube of meetings. If you're going to do that, then it has to be done for all meetings quite fairly. I don't know whether you've done a transcript of the entire meeting or just part of it.
No, just part of it.
Just part of it. I suspected that. So if you're going to provide a transcript, you need to do a transcript of an entire meeting, and there needs to be a decision by this council about transcripts before you start referring randomly to bits of information from meetings in this way.
Okay, point accepted. Suffice it to say that that decision has been made on the 20th of the 12th, and it was agreed by the CPWG that it was not going forward. So Councillor Curdo.
It's probably easier if you just send around a response to that email, just where it was in the YouTube video, because that way people can see it for themselves.
It's in the YouTube video. I tried to be helpful.
No, I appreciate that. But if you say it happens on, I don't know, 20 minutes onwards, then it
I
helps.
can do that.
But at the same time, to Councillor Dawson's point,
I can do
it
that.
then doesn't strip it from the context, which I think is the point that
I
Councillor
think
Dawson
Councillor
made.
Dawson may well be going to object to that too. Councillor Dawson.
I've nothing to say on that point, but what I would say is the neighbourhood plan working group is a working group which, as far as I understand, makes recommendations to the council.
Okay.
So its recommendation, is that what you're saying,
No.
is that there shouldn't be a recording of any usage?
No, I am saying that it was never in the business case, hasn't been a subject of this council detail, wasn't in the list of details approved by this council on December the 7th, and has come out from the clerk in and any other business in the meeting with the contractor. It's not supported by the working group, and I've got nowhere to go with it. So I was.
But can I say it was in the business case? Because we were told in that business case that the Changing Places facility is likely to attract an awful lot of people to the town to use the facility and to use the other amenities. So therefore it is part of it, being able to measure that great popularity and all these new people which are brought to the town as a result of the facility is surely something that has been discussed in the business case.
Councillor Goodall.
First of all, I was at the tone of providing a facility for disabled people in our community. I think it's pretty repugnant. I think that is therefore, Councillor Dawson was saying that by insinuation, there may have been an implication that maybe we should count it. Because from the previous description just made there was no mention of door counter. There's no mention of an officer on the door counting the number of people going in, making sure that it's not the same person twice. I think that not only do I think that this is improper, and I'm in no way trying to sort of take issue with the clerk, because the clerk always does things best endeavours. I just think that it's an improper thing to attach to such a sensitive project. And again, I think the tone just used by Councillor Dawson was nothing short of revolting.
Councillor Dawson.
I think to use that language to describe my tone is really, really inappropriate. I think we're just discussing here the fact that people in Bingley are spending £75,000 on the facility, plus, as Councillor Jewell said, stargazing about living costs. We're down, is it £9,000 or £10,000? I think one of the questions people will ask, as many people, including you, Councillor Williams, asked about toilets when the toilets were first set up, which was, well, how many people are going to use them? How many people will use these toilets? These were one of the questions that people asked over and over again. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask questions. It's not unreasonable to ask questions, even if those questions are not questions that some people want to hear. I'm not asking this question with any other understanding other than that part of the business case, if you look into it, was the purple pound. I've got it up in front of me now. It was about how the purple pound will mean lots of people coming to Bingley. So I would have thought, as showing the need for these facilities, that having some method of showing use would be helpful. Now, if the council's position is, actually, there is no method of showing use, we have no way of showing use, we're going ahead with this in full knowledge that that's what we're going to do, then that's the council's position. We've considered it, we can't measure it, we've no intention of measuring it, and we're going ahead anyway. That's what the council decided to do. And if that's what it's decided to do, well, that's it, isn't it?
Thank you. Councillor Goodall and then Councillor Carney.
Sure. I thank Councillor Dawson for amending her tone, that's appreciated. Read the purple pound, as I previously discussed, there was no explicit mention of door counting or anything of that nature. I would like, well, given it wasn't explicitly mentioned in the business case, presumably there would be maybe a need for now, I'm not sure. However, if we were to approve this, there would be questions that we would need to answer outside of the sensitivity and the reputational damage that doing such a thing would do to the council. The cost of installing the counter. cost of part-time to maintain and pull the data. What will the data be used for? Which I will cycle back to. Will the data be collected for all WCs and the CPT, and how will it be disaggregated? Do we know if any other changing places facilities in the district monitor use in this way? And if everywhere else in the district is comfortable not counting, and why does Bingley Town Council insist on doing so? Now, back to what will the data be used for. I read the implication of the purple pound. If we have 200 users a day, does that tick the box of purple pound? If we have 200 a minute, does that tick the box? It's nonsensical, it doesn't make any sense. So that then begs the question, if we look beyond that flawed argument, what will the data be used for? And my concern, as I mentioned earlier in this meeting, is councillors have not, well, this council hasn't always been viewed as positive in ingratiating itself with its community and with its change. There is a concern in that community, as I understand it, that this data will be collated and hit over the head with them. I don't think that reputation is helped by councillors citing the cost that this will incur for residents of Bingley, which, as we acknowledge, is a lot. Had it happened earlier, it would be less considerable. So I think that the question around what the data would be used for is very important to answer, and to assuage those fears that I can certainly see.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I think Councillor Dawson makes some good points. We do have to justify what we're spending. It is a lot of money. I also will concur with Councillor Thirdale that we do also have a reputation to rebuild. And if we are seen as counting every penny or every person that goes into the changing places, the question we're obviously going to ask, why are we counting the other toilets? Why aren't we saying, well, you know what, we've got 2,000 people coming to the normal toilets, that's justified by, building the hub and reopening the toilets. We can't do it from one project to not another. Are we then going to be saying, right, we need to count how many people use the water fountain, how many people use the defibrillator? We've got to be careful that we are not going to overstep that mark and put ourselves into territory where we may face litigation and generally protect our
toilets.
What's that again, coming back to Councillor Thirdale's point, what is that data used for? Is it used to justify the vote?
Can I step in here and come back to you?
This is, just to finish off, this is what we were talking about on the previous point with going to F&GP. It's just about it being clear, because I think these issues are linked. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
Just want to say, if we don't record use, then I don't think anyone can ever come back to us and say, we're using these toilets a lot, we need to clean them more often, because we have absolutely no evidence to support that. At the moment, with the toilets that we've got, because they do have some evidence of footfall, we have recently taken the decision we can clean them less because of volume of usage and put that money back towards this. If we don't have anything that says these toilets are ever used, which is where we'll be, then we've got no evidence to do anything with that.
Sorry guys, I do want to come in here and then I'll come back to you. I can talk to that. The reason we changed the cleaning, or proposing to change the cleaning regime on the existing toilets has nothing to do with footfall. We clean them last thing at night, clean them first thing in the morning. So there was no one using them in the night, so it was cleaning a clean toilet, so it made no sense. So there was that point. In terms of we do count the footfall in the existing toilets. My logic on that is no, we don't. We simply have a cash collection going into our accounts. This council has had those toilets now for over a year, and we've never wanted to discuss footfall. Not even reported, it's never collected anywhere, so we don't know.
Sorry, that data was recorded.
It's recorded, but not in this council. This council doesn't know. It's in a book. It's recorded there. The other thing about it, it wasn't in the spec for the existing toilets, because when I looked at the user guide from the Healthmatic cash machine and put that in place in September 2020, it was, oh look, it counts footfall. Big surprise, we didn't know. So it does do it, we're not paying any attention to it. So there's that. I did phone the facilities manager of the Broadway Shopping Centre who have a CP toilet. They've got 4 Dock M disabled toilets and 4 ordinary toilets to ask them if they did footfall counters in the toilets. They do it for the centre doors but not the toilets. However, they are thinking of doing it. And the reason they're thinking of doing it is exactly what Councillor Bingley said, to justify upping or downing the cleaning regime on particular days and particular hours. So my view is, that's a big shopping centre, we can do that by opening the door and looking at it. We don't have to count, if we are going to put counters on all the toilets for quality reasons, that's going to be hooked up to a counting doodah, which is going to be hooked up to a laptop, which is then going to be propelled into an Excel spreadsheet, which then got a plot glass of usage over time and things like that, when all you're going to do is open the door and see if it's clean or not. So this is overkill. In terms of justifying the toilets, we have justified them. We've signed a business case, we've agreed it, we're just about to go into contract. There's no way we're not going to do it. So we're talking nonsense here, which is why the CPWG is reacting so strongly to this. I get the point about the transcript, but Councillor Owen starts off by saying we need to know.
Chair, can we just try and move this along a bit, because we're drifting away.
Well,
nearly an hour and
my last point, Councillor
Can I just say that on recording, that it does appear that obviously the shopping centre is going to do the recording because it wants to know its footfall.
That's a massive issue though.
And I think it's the same, what we need to know, because what's the usage trend? And all you're looking at is a high level report, so when we're open to scrutiny from the public. If we can't answer the questions that we're asked, then we're brought to disrepute. And I know you've got a personal grudge against it, so you should try and open your mind a bit. I've told you this before. Please be more accepting and receptive to what's going on. Because it's what you've got down here, and this is a lot of the things that are going on, is what you as now chair are chasing forward. And it's not right, and I've told you this before, and I'll tell you it now in front of everybody here. For God's sake, try and be a bit more accommodating with what people are putting forward. You've got the position of chair which you wanted, now let's try and accommodate all the comments that's going around here and make sure we're receptive to what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dawson.
Given that data is available on footfall for the toilets, could I request that data is made public to the council on a, I don't know, monthly, quarterly, whatever basis is easiest for the clerk and deputy clerk to provide, so that people have got a clear idea of, of what the possible footfall could be through the amount of revenue and the other data that is possible to collect. And if the council is going to decide that it's not going to record user datage for the change in places facility, then that decision needs to be recorded as well. So that if it is ever asked for that information, it can say the council has decided not to record that data.
Can I?
Councillor Gilder.
I've two points that I'll make succinct, don't worry. To answer your point, Councillor Gibbons, about data and making sure that we can up or down that cleaning regime of the CP facility. If we do what Councillor Carney said and rebuild that trust with that particular element of the community, they will tell us. It's fair to assume that it's going to have a lower level of usage than the standard toilets do. So therefore, it's going to be a surprise if members of the community don't reach out to us because of the nature of the project, in my opinion, but I do think it's quite a point. The procedural question, what are we voting on or not here, or what is the way forward?
I don't know the answer to that yet, Councillor Gilder, but I would say, why don't we measure the footfall into the hub, as a hub office, as a resource? We spent £200,000 on that office. Why don't we measure the footfall into the office as an office and not click on the disabled community from the very first thing? Why don't we set up the procedures and the project goals and understand what we're doing and not pick on the disabled community.
Because the reason for that is because we're splitting hairs now, and the long and short of it is it practical, is it possible to monitor that facility as is there's a radar key? If there isn't, let's get on with it, because that facility is there, or it's going to be there, it's going to have to be paid for, and if one person or 1,000 people are using it, it's still going to be the same cost. I understand that there's going to be lefts and there's going to be rights, and that's what we've got too much of, too much lefts and rights here. It is, because what's happening is, you're getting the people who are saying, it's cost so much, and then the other people that saying you're being discriminatory. So you're going to get two. So about building trust, that that's
the answer to your first question is, in its current build state, it is not possible. It hasn't been included.
Well, let's get on with it.
It will cost extra money, and therefore I would suggest we need an R&R. We need to understand the risk. We need to understand the resources of counting it. The clerks always say to me they haven't got enough time. So we don't want to burden them with more reports, more time. Councillor Dawson.
I'm just going to say the purpose of the hub really is not to create huge footfall into the hub, but to provide office accommodation for its small staff. So efforts to record footfall into the building would be another administrative task which is pretty unnecessary, I would suggest. And that's it. And I just think, as Councillor Julian's just said, you just kind of need to kind of move on. If this needs to be an item that we have to discuss or vote on, it has to be there as an item to discuss and vote on, and if it doesn't, then we're just noting it and having that discussion.
As a point of order, Councillor Dawson, it says to receive an update from the recent change in place of working group. The update from the change in place of working group is that this isn't in the spec, it can't be done at the moment, we haven't had our end of budget, we don't want to do it for various reasons. There's a whole 20-minute discussion on YouTube as to why we shouldn't do it. There's input there from Darryl Smith, the access manager for Bradford, saying why we shouldn't do it. So the CPWG doesn't want to do it. So that is to receive an update from the recent change in place of group. End of. So unless anyone else wants to put a motion on, suppose no. Okay, moving on then. Contract specification. That's written. It's in the clerk's inbox. For the clerk's comment. As far as the CPWG is concerned, it's good to go. We can place a contract tomorrow. We have asked the company in the layout of the cleaner's store, we changed the double doors to a single door to increase the security, and that might have a cost benefit to us. So we've now asked the company, is there a cost benefit to the council from changing that door? We're good to go as far as we're concerned with the contract, and the clerk, that has been delegated to the clerk. So moving on to 21-22-225, climate emergency. Councillor Curdo, to receive an update from Councillor Curdo.
I'll be brief, don't worry. We had a very positive meeting. There was an awful lot of ideas thrown around. Essentially, the plans that were, the climate plan that was there before was a little bit inspecific, so what we did was try and refine it, make it more specific. So out the back of it, we've got 18 actions, all of which have been allocated to specified individuals with dates and progress bars as well. That's available for all councillors to see on OneDrive. I would like it to be a live document so people can update it as they complete their tasks. It's a very high level overview. We discuss potentially holding events, so we can talk about climate relevant things. For example, we talk about solar panels and different ways that they can be used, and educating either members of the public, having a speaker talk to it, members of the public, schools, or other bodies of that nature. Other bodies who have already gone green, so to speak. There's a school in Baleham, a primary school in Baleham that is very environmentally friendly, so speak to them, seeing if they would consider speaking to us in a venue of our choosing. and yeah, having events like that. So it's quite exciting in that regard. There are lots of feelers going out in different directions, and those feelers are going to designate exactly where we go. So those feelers include looking at car sharing schemes, looking at, I think there are 2 different actions for car sharing schemes, for example, cycling, other provisions of transport that aren't necessarily using cars. So I think someone had an action to look at the carbon dioxide levels and trying to cure and monitor back again. So there's all sorts of different actions. Don't want to go through them now. There's a lot of different directions. But yeah, are there any questions for the council about it? Great.
No, that was a good start. Thank you, Councillor Gerda. 21-22-226 Emergency Support Subcommittee. This has been covered in terms of talking about the rain over the weekend, but fortunately we met the week before and there were some small changes to the plan in as much as to separate out the forms that we needed to capture the information where we could deploy the resources group. That hadn't been done as per the weekend, so that they weren't done. The stock of the cupboard in the hub has been checked and ticked off, and we agreed that we would have a training session to not so much of how to fix flood joining, but how to enact the plan, and who to contact and who wears a red vest and who wears a yellow vest, and the actual mechanics of running an emergency response. So we're setting that up with Chris Slaven and the fire department, and that will probably be in the hub, and all the people who are on the emergency subcommittee, including any councillor, including any members of the public who are on the WhatsApp group, because it's those people who will pitch up at the weekend. We did, Chris Slaven, the emergency manager of Bradford, has put out a cry for comments following last weekend's flood, and Michelle Chapman and other people are feeding that in. There was a big frustration at the weekend that the flood response was coming into Michelle's telephone, which covered an area bigger than Bingley. So we were throwing out shouts out to Ralston and Harlan, who do have emergency plans, but there was no way to enact them because their phone numbers just got the messaging. So that was a comment that we've got to then have a conversation with those adjoining parishes to make sure that there's some cross-border working. So it's an interesting area at the moment, and we muddled through this weekend, and that's ongoing work. So any questions on that, please? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, I managed to get down to the Hubbers at an open former Councillor Owens there, Michelle Chapman, Steve myself, and then John turned up as I left to go and look at Castlefield. And I think, as an organisation, the dedication Michelle puts into this work, I think we should formally recognise that in the words.
Yeah. She was a councillor.
Joe Renner.
Joe Renner. So were Joe and Michelle and Helen there.
Yeah, the comments coming back from Harden and Wilston after the event was mainly they know about it, but it's blocked drains and field flow, and there's nothing they can do about it, so they don't bother pretty much. But that's probably wildly inaccurate, but that's what I was gaining the impression of. Okay, so can we move on, please? The Facilities Management Subcommittee on 212227, so we've seen an update, there's a typo there in the printed copy, but it's the FM Subcommittee. Again, we met last week and the minutes are not out yet, but pretty much we agreed that we were going to review the list of contractors that we could call on for the hub. We agreed that we wouldn't recommend any term contractor because the building was so small and the issues with it are so hopefully minor. We agreed to get some quotes for new doors for the front of the building. and make a proposal to the council for that in due course. So
Chair, we have to report it back to the Finance Committee.
it will go back to the Finance Committee.
Is there any added value in having this particular committee?
Sorry, John?
Is there any added value by having this committee? Because everything has to be referred back to the F&GP, and a lot of it's handled by the clerk.
You've got a point there, because we set it up.
Be careful,
We took it on as the hub was first put in in September 2020.
And that was worthwhile, but then as it moves on, things have been addressed and done. It's just an ongoing situation which all of the majority of the items can be managed by the clerk.
Can we ask the clerk what her opinion is on that suggestion?
Yeah, I agree. We had a bit of chat about this, didn't we? We spoke to people about it as well. Everything does go back to MGP or council. It's like the updates on the book that we've been providing for the last few months. We haven't discussed that facilities management, we've just provided it here.
Okay, so let's put on the agenda for next month for council to discuss losing the FM subcommittee. Okay.
Yeah.
So moving on then, if everyone's okay with that?
Yeah.
2122228 Finance and General Purposes Committee, Councillor Williams. I wasn't at the last one, but I have seen the minutes, and the things in the minutes were things that I knew about anyway. So, Councillor Gibbons, if you were there, I want to chip in if I forget anything. The SIL document, the SIL policy is up for renewal. Councillors Owen, Gibbons and myself were reviewing it. Now Councillor Owen has left. I do believe we should seek another willing volunteer to help with Councillor Gibbons and myself to do that, because 3 heads are better than one. So I think we'll discuss that in due course. There is a discussion going on about a risk register, because in that committee we talk about risks and add them to a list of risks, but we never seem to take them off. Councillor Gibbons raised the question quite rightly, shouldn't we have a risk register? So Councillor Gibbons got the job of doing that.
Not by myself.
Yeah, but that work's ongoing. The cleaning contract was subject to debate, and that's on this agenda in the confidential items. And the sports bottle filler installation cost was added and passed by the F&GP, so the new CP toilet will have a sports bottle filler on the side of the CP toilet on the middle side, on the south side.
Excuse me, point of order, Chair. Did not the full council vote against that?
No, I believe it voted for the sports bottle fillers at the £550, but when we put that then to the contractor, they then came back and said it's got an installation cost. So I stepped away from that time and pushed it into the F&GP. So it's the installation cost which was voted on by the F&GP to go into the generation and tourism budget, I think.
So the installation cost is what, sorry?
About £350, something like that.
So it's £1,000 for a water bottle filler?
Yeah, 900, yeah. 900, yeah. Yes, Councillor Gibbons.
Just on that, the F&GP, I think I just drafted minutes at the moment, we actually said it should come out of the contingency within the changing prices budget.
Did you? Okay.
I thought that we were looking into it.
Okay.
That was my
Are
understanding.
you confident there's sufficient contingency there?
I was going to ask you that question.
Okay.
At some point, this group, changing prices, does need to come back and report what the spending is. If we're now at the point where you've gone through with the contract.
But the sports bottle filler itself came out of the regen budget.
Well, so the region budget buys it, we're installing it and changing prices.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that. I'm not overly stressed about that. So.
There's a contingency there, we should be using it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Don't have a problem. Is there any questions on the F&GP feedback? No? Okay, 21-22-2-9, neighbourhood plan working group. Councillor Gibbons.
The new consultant is on board, it's very detailed, he's gone through the plan, that calls with the various leads on the plan. The plan the plan per se will be pared down and made pithy, I think is the word that was used frequently, so that it is more focused and it becomes more of a proper assistant to planners document that they will use. But the corollary of that is that one of the things that's been said by local comments on the draft plan by the consultant is we have got quite a lot of things in the plan that are not planning driven but our community aspirations. So that element of the plan, we're looking to have another go at ourselves as the working group, and I would encourage all the councillors involved to come along, because the advice is that we should get as much in the neighbourhood plan when we go out to Schedule 14 consultation as to what we want and how we want to see Bingley developing and growing, because it's easy to take things out and put things back in after consultation, so we need to get as much in now that meets the aspirations of where we need to go. Like I said, all councillors are encouraged to come along. I would seriously welcome Bruce coming along and things out of the climate group coming back in, because I think they do feel quite nicely and will be part of our aspirations. And that meeting's going to be on Wednesday, the 2nd of March, yet to be formally. If that's an issue, let me know. We can always, that's our tentative date. And then we're looking to get the draft of the neighbourhood plan done and back possibly to this meeting in April.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gibbons. Councillor Dawson, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there was previous mention of the Levelling Up Fund working group.
Yeah.
Would it be appropriate to share the work done so far by the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group with that Levelling Up Fund? Because the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group has probably done more consultation on vision and aspiration for the community than any other group that I can think of, really, and so it might help to inform the bids which are going to be made to government on behalf of Bingley.
I'm going to throw that question to Councillor Gibbons.
I think there probably will be a lot of crossover. Unfortunately, the neighbourhood plan as it currently is, we know, is a substantial document with things all the way through it, so it's not easy.
It's also a shopping list. So at present, it's a shopping list. We, the council, have not, or we, the council and the parish, through consultation and Reg 14 comments, have not determined which options within the master plan, for example, we want to pursue to say this is actually what we want. So I think at the moment it's a whole panoply of shopping lists, if you like, things we could do, and that's the point of this aspirational meeting that Councillor Gibbons is talking about. To then brainstorm the things we could do and then decide through the neighbourhood plan working group things we want to do, and then to put it in a Reg 14 consultation to see whether or not the parish wants us to do that.
But I think they should all dovetail.
Yeah. Is that fair enough? Okay. So, is that it? Okay, thank you.
Can I just record my apologies to Councillor Gibbons because I'm not attending the meeting yet. Just something comes up every time. I do apologise, I will get to the next one. Just so you know, I am just not going to.
It's a lot of fun, isn't it? Right. Okay, so 21, 22, 230, Play in the Park, Councillor Druper. Councillor Druper is not here, but there is a list of Play in the Park sessions this year being circulated. So we need to agree the new dates and locations, and they're attached. So, any thoughts, please, councillors? No? Are we good with that? Okay. Yeah. Moved by Councillor Hasseltine, seconded by Councillor Good. All those in favour of receiving those dates? Okay. So, it's 8:15. Does anyone want to feel we will have a 5-minute break for a comfort break, or should we crack on?
Crack on for mine, I can
Crack
crack
on,
on.
so we've got to do. Crack on. Okay. We're cracking on, thank you, Councillor Mann. So 21-22-231, membership committees and working groups. So there follows a list of 3 working groups. We need to agree new members onto the following committees if they're available. So the Climate Emergency Working Group has current members of Councillors Barton, Dawson, Droop and Curdo, and is requiring 2 further councillors if they're available. We have a few absences tonight, so we're not fully staffed. Anyone in the room want to volunteer for Councillor Curdo's Climate Emergency Working Group?
I think I came to the last one and asked the clerk if she'd copy me in, because I want to be involved, but I don't want to be committed as a member.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I feel that if I'm a member, I will attend. I'll have to attend, whereas I'm getting the option otherwise. Okay. Similarly with the climate emergency, the emergency support working group.
Okay. So no further councillors have come forward. We'll ask again next month, I think. Councillor Curdo.
Can I use the John Good provision, please, and apply that to both?
Say again.
I'm going to ask to use the John Good provision that you just used of being looped in but not being a part of the working group to both emergency support and neighbourhood plans. Could just be looped into that, that'd be great. John, I'm just saying that I'm naming the principle in your honour of saying I don't want to be in the group, but I want to be included.
Yes, it wants to be. Take your point. Yeah.
I mean, all councillors are anyway. They all get the minutes, and they all get the invites to the agendas. So yeah, they all get it. So my suggestion would be that we put that on the agenda next month, because we'll have more councillors that can represent next month. There's a few absences tonight.
We also need to keep an eye on our recordings of every single.
We do. Last night we weren't forward with the neighbourhood plan, which was a shame. Okay, B then, emergency support working group. Current members are Councillors Clough, Drupal, Williams, Willard, and Mrs. Lynn Williams. Vacancy of 1 further councillor on the emergency support working group. Councillor Etcherdon, are you volunteering?
Well, being that I usually turn up and put my knees in water and all sorts of good stuff, I will should be there in the hat.
The emergency support working group is really the overlay of all that process and the procedures, so you'll know what you're doing when you get called out. Okay, so Councillor Etcherdon is volunteering. Do we need to propose him a seconding or a year? I'll second him then. All in favour, Councillor Etcherdon, joining the emergency support? That's everyone in favour, thank you. The neighbourhood plan working group. This is a minimum of 4 councillors, but we have 4 councillors. Councillors Beckworth, Carney, Dawson, Gibbons, Truelove and Williams. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 anyway. So, but it says a minimum, so anyone else can join if they want to. I guess that's the point of having it on.
I'm assuming it's
6, isn't it?
I'm assuming it's because Helen was a member as well.
Yeah, but it's a minimum of 4, so it's not, we're not stressed yet. But whether or not any other councillor wants to join the neighbourhood plan working group, please say aye. No one is, so maybe we can put that on the agenda for next month as well. Again, with a bigger contingent. So moving on to 21-22-232 markets, to receive an update on the markets with the notes in the markets meeting held on the 14th. So who would want to take that? I was certainly there. John, Councillor Good was there. Who was? Councillor Dawson, you look like you're going to... Councillor Owen led it.
Well, basically, the problem is that the Town Partnership have told the stallholders that they aren't going to have supply stalls anymore because the Peter has got rid of his, or he's getting rid of his pickup and his trailer, so he won't be able to facilitate that. He has offered us, offered to let's have some stalls. Most of the stall holders have accepted that and are getting alternatives. There's just one said that they would be giving up altogether. There was some discussion about purchasing some stalls in conjunction with the Chamber of Trade. The main obstacle to that is storage. I think we're looking into that. I think we said we were looking into that. So I think it was agreed in that meeting that going forward, I think I suggested it actually, that for the monthly farmers market, all stallholders will have to supply their own facility.
There was only one who hadn't, and as you say,
Dr. Town Partnership said that he'd be available to help them to put up their own gazebos. And then the other issue was the lack of stalls for the what I call the major events, which are the Easter and the Christmas events. Concern about that was there were no availability for stalls, so this is where we were considering maybe to looking at buying some stalls or providing some stalls. I think that we also, it was mentioned that Amplitude were being approached as regards
that's on the agenda.
As regards stalls, though, I think. They're supposed to be having they were looking to have a major, we're talking markets, so they were talking of a major event at Christmas, but I understand that the main problem with that is there's a blooming Christmas tree in the middle of the market square.
They want to put up a massive market in the square.
Yeah, something like that.
That's the way around it.
Yeah, so can't think of anything else.
Councillor Dawson.
So thank you for that. So are these going to come back as proposals then, to buy stalls or to store stalls?
They will have to. We have no way to store them at the moment. The conversation was going around. We could do. So there's no budget allocation. There's no way to store them yet. So the background work is going on to say where can we put them, how much were they, how many we want, who's going to put them up. You know, all that detail is just so high in the sky at the moment. So there's no grounding of it then.
Because can I just interject there? Because just as regards these stalls, the reason for it is that Bradford Council and then what they call the market manager.
Oh, I mean,
Richard, do I get the feeling the vibe that he's taken over the stalls and he sort of rents them out as a private entity now? I think that's
a general gist.
Yeah, yes. And he can't commit to the Christmas event or the Easter event. That's the problem. Okay.
Can I just follow up from John? There was some inference at the meeting that the Chamber of Trade were looking at the purchase.
Oh yeah.
So not necessarily us purchasing.
No.
But the discussion was around storage and around John not having to be there every month and they only know it was on special occasions.
I still have to be there anyway.
We're not putting everything up.
No.
When you was supposed to do it.
We did look into this quite a lot when we originally did that research into the farmers market, and as with all these things, it's beyond just the purchase, and it's not just the storage. There are enormous issues around repairs, damage, liability.
Yeah.
It's a really complex proposition.
Yeah.
It's a lot more complex than just buying something.
Yes, it is.
And responsibility for it. So I think it's really important to bear this in mind.
This did come up apart from the stalls. You don't just need the framing of the stalls. You need tables. You need other things like that.
One of his need drying, don't they?
One of the big things.
Well, the drying, absolutely, the drying was a big issue, you're right, Mark, and we looked into storage space within Bingley for precisely that reason, you know, where could we put stalls, where could we dry things, and it really becomes, you then need a market manager basically to get hold, do all this stuff, so it's not an inconsiderable project.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say our general conclusion was we leave things as they are for now. And just, I think our general conclusion was we leave things as they are for now. Store holders, provider and store from farmers markets.
Okay.
But for the bigger markets, we continue to work with partners to understand how they can be delivered.
I think it depends what comes back from Amplitude, because they appear to have a big facility to store things. And if they can accommodate it via the chamber, we should be all right. There'll be a cost to it. What do we do? Somebody wants to pay it, don't they? Saturdays, Sundays or whatever.
Can we move on, people, please? So, 21-22-233 community events. To consider the following local events, including agreeing volunteers in the actions for the Easter event at the Arts Centre on Good Friday, 15th of April. Indoors, volunteers required. I presume that's sitting behind our stand, is it?
I assume so.
Yeah, as was for the Christmas thing.
Well, what usually happens, I usually not volunteer for that because I usually get the stuff across. I mean, it's not so far now, we can sort of carry it, I suppose. But just it's just a matter of getting probably a banner and any odds and sods that you need to decorate the stall or, you know, things of interest. We do have picture boards, etc. if anybody's...
So are we suggesting that the volunteers who also volunteer to set, determine what's on the table? Are we saying that the volunteers who volunteer to man the stall should also volunteer to decide what's on the table?
I don't know about that, just...
It seems a Greek action. And what you seem to be suggesting is that we need to look at what's on the table.
Basically, it just needs somebody to man it, really. And so that...
yeah, well, I'll volunteer for should we
I mean, the more the merrier. It's just if you have 6, you can split out through the day.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't have one at a time, and you can have 2 at a time.
Calendar, but the team's calendar or something to say who's going on Good Friday. I'm certainly do a slot. Any other volunteers Good Friday? And a busy day.
Definitely volunteer going to camp.
Right.
Happy to do
Sounds
something
like
else.
we'll
We have
put
a
that on
calendar.
Sounds like we'll put that on the agenda for next month as well, so to say that we closer to the date and more people in the room. So certainly I can help with that. B then, Eldrick Gala, 28th of June, volunteers.
Wrong date.
Hey?
Wrong date, 28th. Is it?
It's not a Tuesday, is it?
When is it?
It's 25th.
25th.
Saturday before the Tuesday. Just
There again, I'll put my hand up for Eldwick because we need gazebo up there and we need it erecting.
The 25th? What?
Yeah, Saturday. Just a typo or something.
Well, certainly I can help again on that day, but again we need to put a little chart in place and I wonder if it might be a good idea to ask the admin officer to marshal these spreadsheets of who's coming on, what time for what event. Would that be a suggestion? Yeah.
I think the same format as for the farmers market attendance.
Yeah, that works. Okay, well I can certainly volunteer for the Open Code for Friends of Prince of Wales Park Carnival, 17th of July. That's a Sunday.
I don't know whether there was Bingley at the time, but I don't think it was actually provided gazebo or anything for that. So that's up to us whether we do it or not. Pardon?
It's a stall.
Well, I can't remember.
Well, I believe
Usually we just
I said I don't think we've got we've been to it, yes, because Rachel and Alan were dressed up as the fairies and we got clothes on.
That's right.
So
You
we've
guys
definitely been to it.
Do you guys want to share what you're talking about?
Beg your pardon, Chair.
No, I'm not criticising. I'm saying if you're saying something germane to the action point, I need to know.
I say, I don't remember, I've definitely been there with my van, so we must have had one at one stage, because I had to go through some narrow walls to get in. Yeah. So we have definitely been there before.
Asking for volunteers for some games that are coming on for children.
Yeah.
That's what Helen said.
Okay. Councillor Dawson.
Can I suggest maybe that the proposition of people just kind of filling in their names on a spreadsheet, each of those might kind of expedite things, and then bring it back to the next meeting, because usually what happens is there are insufficient councillors to actually have stall unless councillors do it for hours.
Yeah.
So it might just be as well to see what the level of interest and commitment is, and who's around and who's not, and then if it's possible then to have a stall, then do it.
Okay, well, I agree with that, so that's a great proposal. Dean, the World Cup of Christmas in Bingley, it's just a bit floating there, isn't it, with November, December. We've got the World Cup on the agenda in an email linkage, haven't we, in the Christmas tree in the way and things like that we know on. So should we move on swiftly past D? Yeah. Okay, green and clean, item 2 through 4, Councillor Good.
Right. So the last, we'll be talking initially little pigs. The last little pig we had, I don't have a report on it or not, but a small number turned up and we had a successful day in horrendous conditions. Going forward, we've had a couple of suggestions for possible litter picks in the future. One is Ely Lane and one is sort of parish church up round cemetery area. I've been and reviewed both of those, and at the moment, unless we, a small group or something, work from the Wagon Lane end, that isn't health and safety suitable, because there's a tremendous amount of mould and it is dangerous. The other one, I went and I looked at the old graveyard and walked up through the cemetery to where the children go to, the cut through there through the cemetery to get to the grammar school. They want a lot of litter there. I've also been approached by a chap from Cross Flats who's identified a piece of litter strewn area which is within the Cross Flats first school provision. So it was suggested, and he suggested, and we've technically mentioned it at the last F&GP, and I said that the suggestion was to try and get some school children involved. So it was then that I we got in touch with the Cross Flats school and asked them, because it's to be on their land. But I'd be suggesting for the next litter pick, which is shortly, I forget the date, I don't know the date. Do you know the date, Nicola? No? No. We could work the next one, yeah, we could work the next one from the hub, because the round by that fire pit outside is horrendous.
Yeah.
Is that meeting that we had the other day are we on the agenda with anything to do with that?
No.
No. Okay. We've had a meeting with it's relevant to Bingley. We've had a meeting with Marcy Turley and Andy Olson. I've invited them, Eve. They were saying that depends on who the land belongs to, but I think that Andrew Quarry and myself once did it before, but it's absolutely, I went to look yesterday and it's absolutely horrendous around that area. And it was also suggested that we had to do with litter, that we ought to write to the different outlets, whether they be pubs or eating outlets, a joint letter from Area Coordinator's Office and being a Town Council, and Eve and Marcy are going to put something together, correct? Yeah, okay. So I think that's all I've got at the moment on that. So
Thank you very much, Councillor Wood. Questions for Councillor Wood? Okay. Moving on then to 212235, five-wide waymarking. Councillor Gibbons.
I'll be very, very brief. I have no progress to report.
Okay. Thank you very much. Allotments then, 212236, to consider any allotment issues. There was one that came up today, which was Hulu jumping over the lower fence, nicking plums off the plum tree.
can't be off the plum tree, can it? Well, there's no plums on plum trees this time.
No, but I think it's a complaint from last September.
Oh, right, okay.
So I think you're going to go down and have a look at it.
Right. So this came from Road Today to say that should we install some more fencing. I sent one back saying we ought to have a look at it first and see what's what. On allotments, I didn't take it in F&GP. It was agreed. There's been a lot of controversy about amending the, what do you call it now?
Allotment policy.
Policy, that's the word. Allotment policy in two issues, and they're both. One is whether to allow polytunnels on the site. There are a lot of discussion, especially from our site rep, who is dead against it. I wasn't against it in principle, but the meeting tended to agree that it'd be better not to have them. I finished up by saying basically if we allowed some and not others, and I think I put a proposal, let's say continue no polytunnels, because it can open a big can of worms, and there's going to be people saying, can we have one, no you can't have one, etc, etc. And I just thought that would be easier altogether. There is another issue I'm just trying to think of.
The other issue that came up today was tree height.
All right, we'll see.
Tree height. We're now through with Thompson putting into effect the existing policy on the height of trees, which basically says no trees higher than 6 feet. Hasn't really been applied in the past, so some of these trees are over 6 feet, and if you were to cut them down to 6 feet, it would do significant damage to the root, it would end up with a big stump. It's fair to say that Ruth is asking for awareness of the council of the issue, in case any parishioner asks us what our policy is on tree heights.
The other thing, which is most important, is that it was also agreed at F&GP that from 2023, when the invoices go out for this current year, there'll be a letter in there with the new policy, which includes withdrawing all, what's the word? Concessions. All concessions apart from means tested concessions, and they'll get a year's.
Side rep, yes.
Oh yes, and the site also included in that the site rep gets one free allotment for the work she does. I think that's pretty good.
Thank you very much. Any comments on the allotment reports on our councils?
But that's also been a few information requests about the allotments, finances.
Oh.
From the side.
Happy days.
We're on with it.
Yeah.
They say just more work and I don't know.
So moving on then to 2122237, compliance with the equality duty, to consider requesting information and clarification on the compliance with the equality duty for local councils from YLCA. It says and NALC, but that's kind of a typo because the YLCA will go to the NALC. So this arose from a conversation that Councillor Gibbons and I had back in the summer last year, which I parked because it wasn't going nowhere. But with the annual newsletter that came out a couple of weeks ago, I raised it again. And basically, there's a guidance document. The Equality Act is an enabling act of Parliament which covers the whole bunch of government secretariats. It covers employment, armed forces, sex discrimination, wage discrimination, you name it, it's all in the Equality Act. And it enables every secretariat, every ministry to issue guides. And there was a guide here for what do I need to know, a quick start guide for public sector organisations. So this is the guide that's been produced by the Ministry for Housing and Local Government, and was, but it's now the Levelling Up Government. And this clearly states in it that public bodies must publish information to show that they consciously thought about the three aims of the equality duty as part of the process of decision making. That's kind of embodied within the equality policy you have, but it also requires us to produce a particular policy every 4 years and produce a report on it annually. So my comment was, why don't we put this into the annual letter as an equality policy? So Eve sent that to the YLCA, and they sent back a 2-pager which basically told us what the Equality Act says. So I wrote back to Eve and said, well, we already know that, thank you very much, we've got that, thank you so much. Because it was saying we need to set an equality policy, etc. So this specific requirement about a 4-year review and an annual statement, I get the impression that no other councillors are ever asked the YLCA for, and they don't have an answer, so they're going to have to go to the National Association of Local Councils to ask. Now, what they've said is they've noted that the request came from an individual councillor, i.e. me. So they're reluctant to do the work and come back to us with an answer without the council asking for it. So my proposal is that we ask them for it as a council, because the advice we get from Yorkshire Local Council Association is free of charge, it's embedded within our fees to them, and if we should be doing it, I mean, the Act to me is quite clear. There is a Schedule 19 which specifically says parish councils. So my take on it was that it was quite clear. But I want the YLCA to tell us, and then we're all clear. So my proposal was that we go back and ask them, yes, we agree, we should do that, thank you so much. So that's my proposal. Seconded by Councillor Curtin. But Councillor Dawson, you want to ask a
I just
question?
wondered whether you ought to just make it slightly more clear what we're talking about on compliance with equality duty, that you're talking about that specific part.
I'm talking about the reporting embedded, yes, I agree. So you would like to amend the motion, and I accept your amendment, because we do comply with the public sector equality duty in terms of having a policy document and many other things. But it's the actual 4-year report, the 4-year mission statement, and the annual reporting, which we're not doing.
So that's to consider requesting whether we have to have annual reporting and a 4-year mission statement.
Yes, as embedded within this document.
Embedded within that document, exactly. So that's what we're asking specifically.
I would accept that amendment from you, because that makes that a lot clearer. Lewis is going to second that. So, Lewis, yes, we all agree with that amendment. So, are you clear on that? Right, okay. So, it's now been amended, which we've been asking specifically about this reporting. So, I'm going to put that to the vote. It's been proposed by me as an amended motion, seconded by Councillor Curtin, I guess, an amended motion. Is that true?
I think it's just...
Well, we've amended the motion. What we haven't voted to do it, have we not?
I thought that was what we just voted on.
I think we can vote to amend the motion before we then vote to amend the motion.
Now we need to vote on the amended
Yeah, Councillor Dawson.
The substantive motion.
Yeah, it's a real, so, Councillor Dawson, are you voting to?
Sorry, yes.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Beckwith. Okay, so all in favour then, so we'll wait to see what Yorkshire Local Authority Association comes back on with that. Thank you. Town Clerk's Report, item 2122-238. We have that as a two-page Town Clerk's Report. Following actions allocated.
Before we move on, at what point do we need to amend to spend the money?
At 5 to 9.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm hopeful we might have gone through it. Well,
Yeah, we'll
no,
finish
we
by
won't. Okay. But good reminder, thank you. So, Clerk's report is in front of you. Any questions on it? No. I have a question, unfortunately, Clerk, which is, this says these are the actions allocated to the clerk at the January meeting. What about actions that have been allocated in December, November, October? Will we take it all complete?
There are reports from.
Yeah, but is there a tracker for them as well? Or how do we know whether... this is an action point for the January.
Yeah.
Well, what about all the others? For example, the television case, which was approved in July last year, waiting for the master plan.
That was enough. We got on the report, wasn't it? Because that was before.
Okay. And the extension lead, same thing. You know, that's my extension. So that's my.
It wasn't on my report.
It's still on my.
So there is another to-do list. So what's the point of this then? If
it's a report to the council.
Okay, fine. So we've received it. Any questions other than that? No? Okay, moving on. Correspondence then, 2122-239. To consider any correspondence received by the council, including the following: emails from YLC training, White Rose publications, etc. These come out regularly from the clerk, and their requests for volunteers to go on training. I would urge all new councillors to take up.
What is about signing that form?
Sorry, Councillor Middleton.
There was something about signing a form to let them contact you directly or something.
Last meeting, wasn't it?
Oh, that isn't this.
That's some of this though, because since we signed those forms, I now get stuff twice, once from them and once from the
Yeah. Well, just a bit of a crossover, isn't it?
Okay, so those emails are out there, and you know, I just encourage all councillors, particularly new councillors, to go as much training as they can possibly take on board. B then, email from the resident with the site of the equipment on B Grove, Pembroke.
Yeah, this is interesting. Can I ask what actually this person asked? Because I've been to look at that, and it's in an absolutely ideal position. It is not causing any problems. It's a greater distance away from the curb than the Bradford Council bin, which is 100 yards up the street. It's right on the corner, nobody's looking at it, it's just in the perfect position. So why this person's complaining, I don't know. And why we go to the trouble of providing a bin for the good of residents who choose to complain about it, I don't know. But
plenty of other people who like it.
Pardon?
Plenty of other people who like it.
Absolutely.
I guess some people might not want a yellow box right on the house.
Yeah, they're not yellow anymore, they're black with a yellow top.
Okay. So do we know what the issue is?
I think they were complaining about where the site of what we did with the routes, like the section.
I think they mentioned about stepping off the curb, didn't they? Yeah, no, they can get in single file.
Oh, we're going to send them back.
I did refer it back that they are cited by Bradford Council and they put them in the most user-friendly place.
Okay. Email from the Friends of Bingley Pool with a request to revisit the status of the asset community value in the pool. my personal view is that we should do that. It was subject to a debate a couple of months back when we said that as it came up towards June. April. Yeah, sorry, Councillor,
I think we should do that to support.
What we said was the clerk was going to go away and ask them whether there was any renewal process, and they said no, it's a complete resubmission, it's a form.
You have to resubmit. We did talk to Jason Longest about it on Monday. He's aware that as the community value is coming to the end of its sell-by date, you do need to reapply. And while we are reapplying, I would suggest that town hall, because
all three of them need to
But I thought we were all done at the same time, because officers of Bradford didn't recommend the town hall because there would be no community use. However, because we had held any committee meetings, planning meetings, and the Camden Club had been in with other community use, had to admit that there had been community use, it wasn't an office.
Councillor Dawson.
Yeah, so the town council, we originally put together the papers and the evidence for making these assets of community value, so that would be on record.
It is,
and which could be presumably dusted off and resubmitted. Really.
we should just redo it.
Except that it doesn't have the same status now the town hall as it did, because community groups aren't, I mean the town council's only been allowed to use it. So,
It still allows to take the whole it still allows to use it for Remembrance Day.
I think this one is all about the Bingley pool, those particular things, so it's on the agenda for the April.
Incidentally, they've actually taken the local decision making about upholding the officer recommendation or not away from the area committee, and it's now been by the portfolio holder.
So our response to that is it's on the agenda. We're looking broadly at it. D then, email from Amplitude. This is the email about the World Cup and the seating in the market area, which is right on top of the tree, and for a period of 2 weeks, which goes 6 right on top of the Christmas market, I believe. There had been comments about who would want to sit out in the market watching the World Cup in November. But I don't know what people feel about the council's.
Well, they need to discuss it with him, don't we, see what he proposal is. I mean, if he wants to resite the tree and pay for it, then it's not a problem, is it? So it's in a convenient spot.
The thing about it is it's going to have to do, if it's repositioned, it's going to have to be repositioned before.
Oh,
And stay there till after, because you can't just take it the other one for a number of days.
I've never done for a couple of weeks.
Well, I say a number of days, I think 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
I'm kind of considering whether there's an action or a motion coming out there, to consider any correspondence.
Well, we need to have a meeting with him, don't we?
Yeah.
That's what's going to come from. See what his proposal is.
Christmas lights.
Christmas lights.
Would you like to take that on, Councillor?
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Okay, so do we need to propose that as an action that Councillor Julie will take to it?
it's usual, sorry, Chair, that it used to be the case that councillors went in pairs to meetings.
Yeah. Oh, John will come with us. We'll sort it out, don't worry.
Yeah, okay, so do we need to vote on that? If not, we'll move on to the next one. Email from Air Rivers Trust, river event.
I can tell you about that one. Air Rivers Trust are holding or arranging for river air clean-up on between the 7th and the 10th of April. Friends of Myrtle Park involved, and I was going to wait until the next F&GP we can do it here. Whether I'm what's the word? I'm happy to run an extra little pick on that day, on that Saturday. There on Saturday the 9th, I think it is. I'm happy to be involved with a little pick, and so we could cut that. So I haven't spoken to Friends of Motor Park. They've had a discussion. I should have been in touch with them, but I haven't as yet. That's why we're going to leave it till the F&GP to decide whether we're going to have an extra little pick.
Okay.
I know this isn't an agenda item, but it was sort of correspondence because we got an email to invite us to go to Bradford 2025 meeting, which is City Culture. I attended at Marcus's Cafe, and a chap called Simon Cunningham, David, yes, he offered if we wanted to, he'd be happy to come to a town council meeting to explain or answer questions or anything. I don't know whether we want to do that or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. No. Stick that on the agenda somewhere.
Well,
for the next meeting.
Simon Cunningham, see if he's available.
Yeah. Email from the cleaners of the hub and the board officer of Bradford Council reading the anti-social behaviour. This happened when I was on holiday, but I believe one of the cleaners of the hub got a little bit mobbed by 30 or so teenagers. But I don't know about the board officer comments. Anyone got any further information on that?
We contacted the police immediately, and Marcia Chairman sent out the board officer or contacted the youth service to go speak to the case. I'm going to be there then.
So is this the same event, Eve? And it looks like two emails from the cleaners of the hub and the board officer. Or was it the same event?
Yeah,
It's the same event. It was an email that I sent it on to the Marcia Chairman. So email strand.
Right, okay. Well, while on Councillor Kerdo, an activity with the youth of Britain business. Okay, so Judy noted?
So, this sounds incredibly serious. So what happened to the poor cleaner?
They didn't do anything, they just
Well, no, there's the
kicked his
stole
bucket.
signs.
Oh, his signs are
kids
moving
that
away,
got signed
isn't it?
across.
Normally there's only about 10 of them, but he said there was like 20 or 30 of them, so it was quite intimidated, obviously.
At what time of the day was this?
It was at the last clean, so it was just after 6.
So this isn't good at all. So
No, it's happened before, but not as many. It wasn't
not
until
so
my discount.
So would it, I'm just thinking though, if the last clean of the day is at 6 o'clock in the morning, would it not make more sense maybe to do the clean in the morning? 6 o'clock in the, do you see what I mean? So clean in the morning.
If somebody used the toilet though 5 to 6 and left it in a mess, that'd be all
Right.
That's probably the original thinking.
But it's really concerning. People shouldn't be doing their job and being threatened like this. So have the police been informed?
Yes, so we immediately told the police. They said we would do patrols.
Yeah, we've got time to show up. This is
We've had incidents before when we've been by ourselves and there's been kids hanging around. It is because it's quite isolated.
Yeah. So, we propose to suspend standing on.
Yeah. Seconded by anyone? Seconded by Councillor Gibbons. All in favour of suspended standing orders and get through?
Yeah.
Okay. Well done, John, thank you very much for that. Okay, so can we move on to G? This is the FOI from the Becklane allotment.
I just mentioned the colour down.
Which is considered, so presumably we're complying with that. We note that it's in the existence.
We're on with it.
I'm on with it, so no further discussion on that. Email from Groundworks, or neighbourhood planning funding. Do you want to say anything about that, Councillor Gibbons?
I agree that this is our bid for funding into a locality for money onto the agreement March that's come through.
we had to do something about signing a form and agreeing with it.
We have to sign for, and then we have to send something to more details as well. But it only does take us up to the end of March, so from the first of April, we'll be giving the date for more meetings, we can talk to the through.
And any questions on the neighbourhood plan funding for groundworks? Okay. So email from the former chair of the town council resigning from the council. That was received on Thursday and is enacted at the beginning of this meeting. So Eleanor has been thanked very much for her. Yes, Councillor.
Well, may I suggest, as Councillor Owen has did such a brilliant job over such a long period of time, that the council sends her a card and some flowers, which could come from the chair's allowance, to thank her very much for her service.
I'll send you all in favour doing yeah, good shout. Thank you, Councillor Dawson. So 21, 22, 240 promotional items. Consider any promotional items that the council wishes to publicise from this meeting. So I actually didn't write anything. My first day in the chair, I didn't write anything down. Thank you, Donald.
New chair?
New chair?
Yes, obviously new chair. And I was thinking that was a given. Yes, Councillor.
So although I am suggesting this will risk more a programme, but I do think that people of Bingley need to know and be told that the new project that the council is undertaking is going to cost £75,000 and have projected annual running costs of about £9,000. So far that information has not been publicly made widely available. And I do think it's important, particularly as the contract is good to go, as we noted earlier, that we say the contract is good to go, give some dates for project delivery as well, and give some information about project costs.
Was that not in the newsletter?
No.
And there was a 70 something in the newsletter.
We mentioned about self-funding for the cross-flats.
Yeah, I think that's if that's standard practice for all projects.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with it. It's a fact.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's do that.
I would maybe mention that Michelle and the team sprung into action the other day.
Yeah.
Full support for
Have we done the new Blaine Park dates?
Play in the park, yes. Thank you for that. Do we normally advertise that we've given a still funding out to?
Yes.
Got that there. I don't know if you were to saying about the markets and the stress going on there. Some advertising next look at this bit, I guess.
Yeah, we could later on now liaise with that and sort something out on that.
Okay. I guess the two confidential items won't be included in that, but might be once we discuss them.
Just a question about the promotional items. I know that I raised this at the last meeting, but if it's appropriate, I don't think it would be harmful to include promotion around the weekly town markets as well. I appreciate that they're adverts, but it's on our patch to get more people out into Bingley. I don't see how it would be negative for
I
us.
think it's a promotional item coming out of this meeting.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's not a promotional item per se. We had a meeting, this is what we discussed and what we agreed. So given the fact that it hasn't been discussed.
It's all about market.
Yeah, no, I think it's a bit of a stretch on Lewis. Okay, so any more? Shall we move on? 21, 22. So it was in the newsletter.
Well, you're not really know where to after that.
Other than we don't know.
After the meeting, we'll have a notice there and then we can notes happened.
21, 22, 241, exclusion of press and public.
I'm over in there, but that's,
I know,
I think it's a procedural thing, is it not?
Yeah.
I propose that we exclude the press and public.
So, I just, all in favour?
Yeah.
Right, so you need to give me half a minute because I need to turn the camera off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to turn the camera off.
Technically,
Well, that's what I'm going to do.
technically, bring the word in now.
Oh, I